Are you telling me we got a snitch?
I can't tell you for sure. But yeah, I think you do. I think you should be very careful.
In the Power universe, there are moments which define characters, along there being a common theme. A theme where characters look in the mirror, and despite them pretending that they're businessmen, students, or changed men, the reality is, when they look in that mirror, they can't hide from who they truly are. For many of the characters across Power, Ghost, Raising Kanan, and Force, they're drug-dealing murderers, or they're faced with making decisions which goes against their moral beliefs. This is something that Diamond has finally accepted. There is no leaving this life. Although I do feel the circumstance in which Leon was taken was quite unfortunate, and I don't think Diamond is to blame as such, but it is a huge game changer for the rest of the series, because the old Diamond has finally returned. Now, episode 8 was more than just about characters coming to the realization of who they are. Tommy continued to make strides in achieving his end goal of becoming the King of Chicago, but his chess moves are also being matched by Shanti. She continues to make strides, and in some ways, she's learning from Tommy and making very similar moves. The chess game also extends to law enforcement with Stacey Marks, but can she stop Tommy Egan, or will he remain 3 moves ahead in Power Book 4 Force Season 2? Now, this episode picks up the same night Vic killed FBI agent Vargas. Tommy questioned Vic how did Vargas know where they were, and the first thing he did was search his car for a tracker. This is where the tracker that Vargas gave to Vic comes into play. He made it look as if this was in his car, and he was the one who was being tracked, and I really do believe this is an important clue which was touched later on, so I will come back to the tracker later on in this video, but they both knew killing a cop meant all hell was going to rain down on them in the street. Tommy then begins to search his place to see if it was bugged. This is also where he was honest with Maria. If she didn't want to know what was happening in his double life, then it was best not to ask, which she did respect, although this is a topic I am going to come back around to later on when it comes to Lakeisha. Now, unknowingly, Maria dropped the crucial bit of information. It was Che's daughter's quinceañera, and Tommy's eyes lit up because we all know what he had in the back of his mind. As the dust started to settle after Vargas' death, we saw another familiar theme across the Power universe, something we've seen from Tariq St. Patrick, with him having nightmares of those who he killed, innocent civilians as well as those who are not so innocent, caught up in his game. Now, many may question why did Vic not have visions of his father. The fact is that he felt a lot of remorse over Vargas' death, because he was an innocent cop who was just doing his job. He was a father and was unfortunately just caught up in Stacey Marks' desperate moves. But as Vic was pulled into Stacey Marks' office, Stacey came down hard on Vargas' death, and they questioned him on the events of last night. Although he stayed strong and he said he's done everything that's been asked of him, but Stacey wasn't having any of it. She wanted everything that he had on the CBI, otherwise she was sending him to prison. With the blood of Vargas on Stacey Marks' hands, she said she wanted them to show their force by raiding the CBI, and Bobby DeFranco is on board, although I do think he knows she's acting on emotion. We all know what happened when Stacey pushed hard last time. It ended up in Vargas' death, and I wouldn't be surprised if her next move resulted in more death for a task force. This is also where she had a lightbulb moment. She was going to try and rattle some cages through information that was obtained through Vargas and Hardwick earlier on in the season, Maria Garcia. This also goes back to another familiar theme in the Power universe. Despite Vargas now being dead, he did leave something that could help Stacey and the task force. Now with Diamond, he was growing close to Gianna and Leon, but Gianna did warn him. She knew who he was, a drug-dealing gangbanger. Although Diamond did refute this, he said he was trying hard not to be defined by his past mistakes. Unfortunately, Diamond can try as hard as he wants. The fact is, he will never be able to escape the sins of his past. The same also goes for Tommy, who caught Diamond up to speed about Vargas' death, and I do think the way Tommy answered Diamond's question about how they knew their location is important. Tommy had to think about it for a second, and they said that they found a tracker on Vic's car, but he had to think about it for a split moment, because they didn't find it on Vic's car, the tracker was inside Vic's car, and at some point, I really do believe something will begin to click and Tommy will begin to connect the dots. Now they also speak about bringing in the SODs, which stands for Sons of Destruction, a group that CBI have had bad blood with for years, but they're the Serbs' biggest crew who they used to supply. If they get them on board, then it was game over. But this wasn't just Tommy's only move. He was going to put word out on the street. Miguel Garcia got Mirkovic's supply cut, which would have made the Serbs retaliate on Miguel and the Insane Princes. In the meantime, Tommy said he was about to meet with Shay.
Chaos creates opportunity.
Despite Tommy being a seasoned criminal, Tommy is also a student of the game, and this is something he learned from Claudia. Chaos creates opportunity, and he was certainly about to take full advantage. Now, Tommy wasn't the only one who was taking advantage of chaos, so was Shanti. At Westside Boxing, Claudia tells her about Elise's deal that they set up at Viagra Triangle, and this is definitely a foreshadow of what's to come. Both of these characters are snakes. We all know Claudia can't be trusted, and we are starting to learn the same of Shanti, so when the time comes, these two characters will not hesitate to snake each other out for the top spot, but for the time being, they do need each other until they don't. Chess games were being played across the board in episode 8, including law enforcement. Stacey Marks rolled upon Tommy and said she doesn't take too kindly to people who fake their death in New York, which Tommy just kinda shrugged his shoulders at. But not only did he fake his death, he's come to Chicago and got into business with the CBI, the Flynns, the Serbs, and caused a hell of a lot of mayhem. This also goes back to my point about Tommy being a seasoned criminal. He wasn't intimidated by Stacey Marks' show of force. He's been in a cat and mouse game with law enforcement before back in New York, and he knows how to play them. And to be fair to him, he has been one move ahead at all times so far. But will he always remain ahead? That's another question entirely. Especially because Stacey Marks could cause Tommy some huge issues by exposing his relationship with Maria Garcia. She warned him that she was going to wipe the smug smile right off his face, and using Maria is certainly one way she could do that. Chaos creating opportunities does go both ways in this game. It works for drug dealers as much as it does for law enforcement, and so it is something we can't rule out. Now, while this was going down, Vic was in two minds about leaving town, because that's the only option he has to survive. If he stays and continues to inform on Tommy, he's dead for being a snitch, but if he doesn't, then Stacey Marks will put him away for life. So Vic is in a real dilemma. Now, with that being said, he points a finger at Janard and tells Tommy he had a meeting with Claudia, and maybe they were the ones who pointed the feds in their direction, which did give Vic some respite because Tommy turned his attention to Janard, although it didn't give Vic too much breathing space with law enforcement. Later on in the episode, he was brought back in, and Stacey Marks put Vargas' notepad in front of Vic because she knew he was lying. Now, what followed was very reminiscent of something we've seen from Blanca Rodriguez.
At the parking garage?
At the parking garage. I saw him.
Choke.
I saw him choke.
Back in Power, we saw Blanca Rodriguez manipulate Trey's statement to say he witnessed Ghost kill Terry Silver, and this is what we saw from Stacey Marks. She pushed Vic into a corner, and he really had no choice but to say the same with Tommy. So episodes 9 and 10 will be very interesting to say the least, especially because Jenny Sue did make it clear they have a CI embedded in their organization. Now, with Miguel Garcia, he was ready to take advantage of the void left by Mirkovic in the north by making a move with the DSDs, but unbeknown to him, Tommy had already made a deal with Chavo before he did, and this is when he started to realize his grandmother was right. Tommy is coming for his spot next, but he did still have a few moves to make, one including the SODs and another play between the Serbs and the Insane Princes, once again. This brings me on to Mirkovic, who muscled his way onto the Viagra Triangle business, which is where Mirkovic found out Tommy was trying to poach his business before Tommy could get word out on the street. Miguel was the one who cut him off from Che. This goes back round to the title of the episode, Dead Reckoning. It's all about timing of chess moves, making critical decisions, and taking action on information. It's a concept that reflects constant risk, calculations, and consequences. Had Tommy been successful in planting that information before Mirkovic received intel about his move with the SODs, then Mirkovic would have probably attacked Miguel rather than Tommy and the SODs. Now, earlier in the episode, Tommy did tell Diamond he had to be there to squash the beef with the Sons of Destruction, but this is one of the themes for Force Season 2, Double Lives. Everybody lives some sort of double life, and Diamond had to make a choice. The CBI graffiti in the background painted a picture of his drug life, but Leon was the opposite. So with the meeting with the SODs at the same time, Leon was going to come over and practice his speech. He really had a tough choice to make. Diamond sent Janard to the meeting with the SODs because he made his decision. He was trying to change his ways. Now, this is where it was Janard's turn to give Tommy a warning. The SODs are people that can't be trusted, and as he mentioned earlier in episode 8, he did run the CBI for 15 years, so he knows his history. Now, as Tommy was brokering a deal with the leader and trying to squash the bad blood between them and the CBI, there was a cool little Easter egg to part of the game by 50. Tommy said, like they used to say back in Queens, when shit hits the fan, we'll take money, which is a line from the Raising Kanan soundtrack. But shit hitting the fan was exactly the right term for what we saw next. The Serbs came in all guns blazing, and we saw the SODs along with Tommy, Janard, and Vic holding it down and fighting them off. After that was over, if the leader of the SODs had any doubt about joining the coalition, then what just transpired made up their minds. We also can't forget about Janard having Tommy in his sights, but instead of taking the shot on Tommy, he killed a Serb, which built a bit of trust between them. Now, while this meeting was going down with the SODs, Diamond was helping Leon, and he's more than just a mentor, he's also a father figure, making him believe he can do whatever he sets his mind to, which I do think is important for young kids to hear at Leon's age. But as he took him home, this is where tragedy struck. The same kids that were bullying him earlier in the season rolled up on him, but this time, he gave as good as he got, and as Diamond looked on as if he was a proud father, he had no chance of stopping what came next. This was a huge tragedy and one which really hit home through Gianna's reaction, and where she blamed Diamond, this was about to be the catalyst for the rebirth of the old Diamond. Now before we get to the events at the barbershop, there was still a lot of events that played out in between. Claudia met with Shanti and told her about the partnership with the Serbs, who gave her no choice but to accept the deal. But one thing we've learned about Shanti is, she's a very clever chess player, she makes the right moves time and time again, and she knows there's a time and a place to attack, and this moment ain't it. But you can bet, she is planning her moves very carefully with Janard. Shanti was looking at the board and thinking, what was the best possible move in her position? And she came to the conclusion it was, to be honest, to gain Tommy's trust. One of the laws from the 48 laws of power is to use honesty to disarm your enemy, and the fact that Shanti was honest in this situation, it did build a bit of trust between Tommy, Shanti and Janard. So as much as Tommy is playing some very clever chess moves in the street game, Shanti is doing exactly the same. Now on Tommy's moves, this brings us on to Che's daughter's quinceañera. Here we saw a real family vibe, which is what the Latinos and Mexicans are all about. We had Miguel and Maria in a conversation about how he'd do anything to protect his family, along with Miguel's grandmother telling Che, never underestimate what Miguel is capable of. She's someone who's seen a lot in the game and she can see things Miguel can't or is blinded to. Classic example, how Tommy was coming for his spot next and how he had to be very careful of Nunez. Miguel gave Nazi a promotion before he did and he feels left out, and so sooner or later he may not be so loyal. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is another crack that Tommy does take advantage of later on. But based on Abuela's intuition, which dates all the way back to episode 2, I don't doubt her, and if Miguel had any doubts, seeing Tommy walk in and introduce himself to Che would have made him realize Grandma was right all along. Tommy came in and made himself known that he was the reason why every crew in Chicago has fallen in line under his coalition, and in turn, squashing any beef and filling all of their pockets. Now Che was really impressed because Tommy has managed to do something Miguel couldn't, unite all the crews and avoid a war. But just have a look at Miguel and his grandmother, they really weren't happy, and you can bet, spearheading their next move will be Abuela. Now just on a quick side note, I really liked how Tommy was beginning to evolve and learn Spanish, no doubt from Maria, just like Ghost did from Angela back in the day. Now Maria wasn't happy at the fact that Tommy came to Che's daughter's quinceañera. She felt as if she was being used, which wasn't the case. Tommy genuinely does care for Maria, and he said if he had to deal with Miguel, then so be it. But this is where Maria faces a huge internal conflict. Despite her not getting on with her brother at this moment in time, she is a Garcia, and she won't just turn her back on them. Another dilemma which adds to Maria's confusion is Stacey Marks. She rolled up on Maria and warned her that she was involved in a bad man, and it's true. I recently questioned whether Maria truly knew who Tommy is, because there is a lot that went down in New York that she isn't aware of, and this is something that Stacey began to play on. She asked her to ask Tommy about Lakeisha Grant. Now Tommy told Maria earlier in the episode, don't ask questions you don't want the answers to, but I do think we are going to see Maria asking Tommy about Lakeisha. Whether she respects his honesty when and if he does tell her this time around is yet to be seen, but it sure is something that they will come back round to. Now just before we come to Diamond's cutthroat decision, elsewhere in the episode we also had the return of Kate Egan, who said she went back to New York to take care of a few things. Although I don't imagine this being the return in Go Season 3, we're still yet to see Tommy return to New York, and so that hasn't happened yet, but Kate is a wreck. She was a mess because she believed Tommy and JP killed her grandson, although JP opened up to her about how they kept the truth from her because Tommy felt as if she would only make things worse. But now she does know the truth. Let's see whether she can sober up or find D-Mac, but based on what we saw in Go Season 3, I think we all know it's just going to head in one direction for Kate Egan. Now over to Diamond's cutthroat decision. He sat in the barber chair drinking, coming to terms about who he was after Leon's death. It circles back round to the beginning of the video, a familiar theme that we've seen across the Power universe. Characters looking in the mirror and realizing they can try and be different, they can try and live a different life, but at the end of the day, when they look in the mirror, they can't hide from who they truly are. For Diamond, he was a drug-dealing murderer. Now why Mr. Reeves decided to come and see Diamond was because Jamal told him Diamond was playing him, and when he came in, he saw the boatload of cash and product on the floor with a drunken Diamond, and Tommy took a step back. Mr. Reeves then took his cuffs out to take Diamond back to prison. Now Tommy did warn him. He said he wouldn't do that if he were him, because he knew what Diamond was just about to unleash. This was the Diamond of 15 years ago, the Diamond that Janard warned us about, and the reason why he was scared when his brother came face to face with him earlier in the season is because he knew what he was capable of, and now we all know as the audience. Tommy's smirk also said a lot. It was a smirk as if finally the real Diamond has arrived, the old Diamond that can help him achieve his end goal of becoming King of Chicago. So as I said before the beginning of Season 2, I feel sorry for anybody who stands in Tommy's way. Well, I really don't think anybody's ready for the storm that Diamond's about to bring, because the old Diamond is back.